Today we're going to remove a carburetor from a motorcycle. Okay, the first step is to remove the fuel hose from the carburetor using pliers. It's a little pinch clip. Just slide it away like that. And then using a bottle to catch any drips, we'll pull the fuel line off. And catch any fuel that's in the fuel line. Now we're going to remove the choke cable from the carburetor. This carburetor uses a plunger style choke. So we'll just use this hand wrench to undo the choke fitting from the carburetor. And once loose, just pull the choke cable clear. If fuel's still dripping out of the carburetor, put a rag or something underneath to catch any drips. There's a hose clamp between the carburetor and the intake on the motorcycle. There's what appears to be a Phillips, but it's not. It's a Japanese industrial standard. So we're just going to undo this hose clamp here. And you want to make it reasonably loose so you don't fight it when you're removing the carburetor. There's also a hose clamp between the carburetor and the airbox, so we're going to undo that as well. We're going to want to make sure it's reasonably loose so we're not fighting it either. Okay, great. Now on the other side of the carburetor, we've got the throttle linkage. So when you twist the throttle, you can see that it pulls, or it twists the butterfly open in the carburetor. So what we have to do is we have to unbolt this assembly from the carburetor and slip out these cables. This here is the throttle adjustment, or the idle adjustment. So when it's turned in, it gives it more throttle at idle. So in this case, we're going to use a 10mm wrench, and we're going to unbolt this throttle here. Now it's got a set screw at the bottom to keep it in place. So we're going to want to make sure that we return it to where we found it. Alright, and once we're clear, we pull that cable loose and we rotate this plate, or this guy here, and with the cable you can actually slide the cable out through that notch there, and then it's free. And then there's these two fasteners here. Again, they look like Phillips, but they're not. They're Japanese industrial standard, and using a Phillips on these screws, you run a risk of damaging the heads. So we're going to undo this screw, and we're going to undo this one. Pull that screw out. And then same thing with this cable. With the cable slack, you can rotate this part here and pull the cable out of the throttle plate, or the throttle arm. And there, now it's free. Okay, at this point the carburetor is free from the bike. The only thing holding it is friction from the boots. So now we're going to fight it and get it out of here. So generally speaking, you have to push back into the airbox, and then you can rotate it out of its boot. And there we go. It's free. Except for this hose. And there we go. And that's the freed carburetor. Now I did miss one item. This line here is the vacuum from the carburetor for the petcock. So when the carburetor is, or when the engine's running, the carburetor will create a vacuum at the back end of the butterfly here, and so this line attaches to the back of the petcock and allows fuel to flow from the tank into the carburetor. But in removing the carburetor, this line came off. It doesn't have a clamp or anything to hold it in place. With the carburetor out, we can see here's the butterfly, and here's the idle speed adjustment screw. And I'm going to rebuild the carburetor and just take off the bottom plate here, the 4 screws. Again, Japanese industrial standard, important in this case because it could damage the screws using a regular Phillips. And inside there'll be a few jets that can be replaced or cleaned. In my case, I'm hoping they can be cleaned. And on the back side of the butterfly is the tower for the carburetor. You can see actuating up in there, and it's moving freely, so that's okay. When you're done taking the carburetor out, put a rag or something in the hole in the engine, and this will keep debris from entering the engine while you're working on the carburetor. When working with gasoline, your hands might end up getting a bit of a smell. If you want to get the gas smell off your hands, if you wash your hands with toothpaste, believe it or not, it'll actually get most of the gas smell off your skin, and then it'll smell great. Okay, while we're at it, let's have a look in the bowl of the carburetor. So we're going to undo the fasteners, again using Japanese industrial standard. And what's happening with this bike is it isn't idling very good, so I'm presuming one of the jets is dirty. So I just want to clean them out. I don't think it's bad enough to require a full rebuild kit, but that's definitely a good option. So in the carburetor here, you'll see this is the bowl. Very little debris in the bowl, but there is some. There's the gasket, which we'll reuse. Here's the float. And these are the jets. You've got your high speed, low speed, and main jet. And this is the float. So the float seems to be actuating fine. And everything seems to be free, so I'll take it apart, I'll clean the jets, and hopefully we'll be back in business. Alright. Thank you very much. Job done. Well, not really.